This week, we are going to be doing a whack about integers. We're going to watch the video, we're going to analyze it with a 3-sentence summary, and then you're going to create a question that goes with this. Today we're talking about integers. There are 4 different math operations for integers. You either add, subtract, multiply, or divide integers. When adding and subtracting integers, there's a battle that will happen, and whoever has more people battling on their team is going to win, and that's going to be represented more. But with multiplying and dividing, they have the same rule. You just count how many negative signs, and if there's an odd number, it's a negative answer. So if there's 1 negative and 1 positive, that's an odd number of negatives, and you end up with a negative answer. But if there's 2 negatives that you're multiplying or dividing, they will cancel each other out in a sense, and you will get a positive number. Now let's go through some examples. Here's an example of basic math, 5 plus 2 equaling 7. We're going to look at that on a number line. So you're going to start at 0. Once you do that, you're going to follow the arrows. With you're going positive, you're going to the right, negative, you're going to the left. So here we're going to start by going plus 5 to the right, because positive to the right, and then plus 2 more to the right, and that's how we arrive at 7. So to determine that second one, you're going to count 2 more places in that direction. So plus 2. Here it is. And that got us 7. We're now at the place where this arrow stops here at 7. So that's how you would add on the number line. Next, for adding integers on the numbers, when you have a negative now. So if I have a plus 3 and a negative 7, let's start at 0. We're going to go to the right because that's the positive direction, 3 steps. Then we're going to go to the left 7 because negative is going to the left. That's how you end up leaving off at negative 4. That second one is going to tell you where your answer is. So if you have a negative 7 and a positive 3, you end up at negative 4. In a sense, they're battling. The negative 7 is fighting against the positive 3, and since there's more of the negative 7 is going to win. So it's different signs. You're subtracting them to get where you need to be. You can think of it also as using your absolute value. Absolute value is always positive. Now, absolute value is a term where you're just seeing how far away a number is from 0 on the number line. So it's the distance from 0 on a number line. It's always going to be a positive. There's no such thing as a negative absolute value. And there's 2 lines on each side of it. You've got a bar on each side showing what absolute value means. Like this. The absolute value of 5 is 5 because it's 5 places from 0. The absolute value of negative 5 is also 5 because negative 5 is 5 places from 0. You also have comparing of integers. You've got your greater than sign, you've got your less than sign. All negative numbers are less than 0, and all positive numbers are going to be bigger than negative numbers. The larger a negative number is, the smaller its value. So a negative 100 is way smaller than negative 10. It's like owing more money. More and more debt you are, the smaller that gets. Now, when we're dealing with the adding and subtracting of them, that's different. That's not a bigger, smaller issue. That's saying, okay, the negative 7 in this scenario, where to go? The fighting with negative 7 here, it's got more negatives, so it can win the battle. Negative 7 is a smaller number, but even though it's a smaller number, it can still win the fight, and you can get a negative answer. Those are 2 different concepts. Okay, next, adding integers when you have the same signs. So if you've got a same sign and you're adding your numbers, you would keep it. So if they're both positive, it stays positive. So 12 plus 6 is just 18. If they're both negative, it stays negative. So a negative 7 and a negative 10 becomes negative 17. Adding integers. When you have different signs, you're going to subtract. Same signs, add and keep. Different signs, subtract. That's exactly what we're talking about. Same signs, you just add them together and keep it either positive or negative. Different signs, subtract. You're going to keep the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. So this is where you start thinking of war. You're thinking who will win, by how much they will win. So if you have a negative 12 and a positive 8, negative 12 is going to win because there's more of it. There's more negative than there is of that positive. Positive 8 is a bigger number technically, but there's more of the negative 12, so negative 12 will win in a war. Negative 7. Negative 7 fighting against a positive 10 is going to give you a positive answer because the positive 10 will win. So, when you're subtracting integers, it's the same basic concept, but sometimes you get that double negative thing happening. So it's like a swipe, swipe. Keep the first number, change the additional swipe. So you're changing two numbers. Follow the rules for adding integers like you normally would. So if you have a negative, here's the like squinty looking man that you can turn into a plus sign, because subtracting a negative is the same thing as adding. Trying to subtract a negative is like do the opposite of what this says, so it becomes a positive. So a positive 12 minus a negative 6 becomes 18. Now here, there's no double negative here. There's not a negative and then another one. It's just 3 minus 11. So you can think of it as a negative 11 fighting against a 3 because that's different signs. Here this was same signs because they ended up both being positive. Now this is different signs. Same signs, add and keep, different signs, subtract. So you're keeping the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. So we're going to keep your negative 11 so that you end up with a negative, and then you just subtract 11 minus 3 to get 8. Those are the rules. Then there's that song, remember it. Same signs, keep and add, different signs, subtract. Keep the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Same signs, keep and add, different signs, subtract. Keep the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. That's what you got to do with all adding and subtracting. So let's move on to multiplying and dividing. Multiplying and dividing of integers. So if they have the same signs, you multiply or divide the numbers like you always would. So if they're both positive, you stay positive. So you've got a positive 3 times a positive 6, positive answer. Negative 3 times a negative 6, that is an odd number. That's two negative numbers. So you're going to get that's an even number. 2 is even. So they cancel each other out and you end up with 18. So the two negatives being multiplied together gets you a positive answer. Same thing with division. Two positives get a positive. Two negatives get a positive also because it is an odd number of even number of negatives. Even number of negatives, you're going to get a positive answer. An even number of negatives or an even number of positives, and they cancel each other out with the negatives and you get a positive answer. Now, different signs. This is where you end up with a negative answer. So you're multiplying or dividing the way you normally would. So 3 times 6 is still 18, but because there's only one negative sign, you get a negative 18, because 1 is an odd number. Now you've got a negative 27 divided by 3, only one negative sign, negative answer. That's it. That's the basics of your adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing of integers. Please re-watch this video, and if there's anything you're unsure of, ask us. Come and talk to us before or after school. Make sure that you write your 3-sentence summary on this video and that you come up with a question about integers. Thank you so much for your time.